Hello BookTube, this is part 38 of my 2022 library tour, Science Fiction and Fantasy 15. I'm starting a new set of my 8-sided bookcase, or a new half. So I've got these 4 shelves and then the 3 shelves of my brother's bookcase, which will wrap up the library tour. So we're getting there. But first, let's get to the books on this shelf. First up is starting off where we left off yesterday with Arcadia Martin. This is a Desolation called Peace. This novel focuses on the mysterious alien threat or presence that loomed in a memory called Empire. The aliens have come close enough that they are in direct conflict with the Tychus colony. To assess the situation and to attempt to communicate with these aliens, 3 Seagrass volunteers herself to lead the communications attempt. Joining her somehow or other will be Mahit and other characters with important roles will be a Tychus colony general who's leading the fleet, and the young emperor heir. I'm blanking on his name. Anyway, so one of the differences with A Memory Called Empire is that there are far more points of view. In A Memory Called Empire, the only point of view was Mahit's. In Desolation Called Peace, there are significantly more characters having points of view. I read this last year for Space Opera September, I think, and I bailed on it. I didn't like it. I thought the aliens were... I've seen them a billion times, and what little magic there was to A Memory Called Empire. I mean, admittedly, that magic was at the end that amazing conclusion, but I wasn't into it, so I bailed. Next is In the Company of Ogres by Ailey Martinez. I think Ailey Martinez also blogs, although I don't know whether or not he still does. It's been years since I've looked. But I picked this up from Golden's Book Exchange years ago because of that, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. I want to say this is a humorous fantasy, but of what kind, I don't know. Next is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is a YA space opera masquerading as an adult space opera. It's about a not terribly powerful space empire that inhabits an entire solar system, whose royal family maintains dominance through marriages with elites of the subject planets. In this case, a young, annoying prince is set to replace, I guess, a more responsible prince as the husband of a notable in one of the other subject planets. And yeah, I hated this book, so I did not like this book at all. I bailed. Next is The Many-Colored Land by Julian May. I picked this up because Steve Donahue routinely sings its praises whenever he gets a copy of it from the Bridal or it appears in his book tour. It's the story of a far future humanity who have developed telepathic, telekinetic powers, who, bored of paradise, take advantage of the development of a time travel corridor device that allows them to go 6 million years in the past. Unfortunately, Earth at that time period was colonized by an alien species who, when these advanced humans come, enslave them. And that's, yeah. I haven't gotten around to it yet, and I think I picked it up one of the last times I went to Golden's. The next book is Sins of Empire by Brian McKellen. This is Gods of Blood and Power, Book 1. This is the sequel series to The Powder Mages. And it's set in a world inspired by the late 18th century, I would say. And it involves a conflict between traditional wizards and wizards who can use, by ingesting gunpowder, can do certain effects. In this series, the mercenary company that the main characters belong to are hired to basically police, defend a kind of sort of United States XP who are having conflict with the native population, as well as threats from a distant empire. I didn't particularly care for this book, which is why this is the only Brian McKellen I have, and I will eventually get rid of it. When? I don't know. Probably soon, though. Another book I did not get on with is Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. Shannon McGuire is famous for her series of short novels, novellas about various characters portal questing. I think I'm blanking on the series name right now, though. But anyway, so Middle Game is an urban epic fantasy that I think recently had a sequel released about an evil alchemist trying to acquire the powers of God by creating sets of perfect, ideologically perfect twins, in sort of the sense of one twin is really, really good at one thing, and the other twin is really, really good at its opposite. And these twins are so bound up together that when they kind of come together, when they join forces, they can affect the world. So in this situation, the main characters are the twins Roger and Dodger. Roger is really good at language. Dodger, she's really good at math. And so the alchemist basically manipulates them throughout their lives until he decides that I'm going to go and kill them, which then leads to the twins sort of fighting back. I really didn't like this book either. The next three books are by Peter McLean. They are the three books of the War for the Rose Throne series. This is book 1, Priest of Bones. It's the story of Thomas Piety, a gang boss who is returning from the war, who finds his position in his hometown of Ellenburg threatened or non-existent, and who fights to reclaim his territory, his position, and in the accomplishment of this goal, he is co-opted by the Queen's Secret Service, the Queensmen, who use him to combat foreign interference in the city, who are seeking to basically take over Ellenburg in order to expedite an invasion. I really love this book. It's wonderful. So yeah. I also have the sequel, Priest of Lies. It takes place a few months after Priest of Bones. It's basically the continuance of the conflict between Thomas Piety and his gang and the gangs controlled by the Skanians, though, foreign power that seeks to use their influence in Ellenberg as a springboard for an invasion. I like this novel quite a bit as well. And I just recently picked up Priest of Gallows. This is the third book I haven't gotten to yet, but I hope to not too distantly from now. If you notice, this edition is rather different than the other two books. That's because this is the British edition. There is no American edition of Priest of Gallows because, unfortunately, Peter McLean has the unfortunate, or it's unfortunate for him that his series, trilogies, or in this case a tetralogy, because there's a fourth book coming up later this year, get canceled at 2 volumes. So his American publisher canceled the series, but his British publisher continued, and that's where I got that. The next book is An Accident of Stars by Foz Meadows. Foz Meadows used to be a blogger at Blackgate, I think. And I saw that she had some fantasy series out, so I picked this up from Amazon, but I've never gotten, or maybe I picked it from Golden's. Well, wherever I picked it from, I haven't gotten around to it yet. I really should, though. The next 3 books are the Bossalog trilogy by China Mieville. This is Predito Street Station, the first book in the series. It is set in the city of New Cribuzon, and it's about Isaac Grimnebulin, who is a renegade scientist who is seeking a way to create a sort of a difference engine, basically a perpetual motion machine, or perpetual energy machine. He is approached by Yagaric, a mutilated Garuda, to create him flight, to give him flight back. His wings have been removed, amputated. So initially Isaac looks to give him mechanical wings, and he does this by studying various flying animals and beings, until he realizes it's just easier to do what I've already been doing and give him a difference engine. Unfortunately, one of the flying creatures he collected to study is a monster. A monster that eats dreams. And yeah, things go from there. I love this novel. It's been far too long since I've read it, but oh, I love it. The next book, and probably even better, is The Scar. This one takes place on the pirate city of Armada. Bellis Coldwine, a former lover of Isaac's, has fled New Cribuzon for the colonies, and while she's en route, her ship is captured by pirates from Armada, a massive floating pirate city composed of hundreds of captured ships of various kinds. While she's there, her talents as a translator are exploited by various powerful people who use her ability to translate to find out where they can summon an Avank, a massive, multi-dimensional creature. And so because they're intent on moving Armada to a special dangerous spot of the world. While that's going on, there is somebody else on Armada who brings a lot of danger. I love this book. It's been far too long since I've read it. I really need to revisit it. And of course, I also have the 3rd volume in the Bossalog trilogy. This is Iron Council. This novel takes place a few decades after Predito Street Station and The Scar. It's basically a story of war. New Cribuzon is at war with the city-state of Tesh. While this war is going on, a number of New Coruscant rebels are have fled the city seeking a roving train that initially New Coruscant had set a sort of a train tracks to one of its allied cities, but the workers rebelled and took over the train and have ever since become effectively a moving locomotive city-state. So one group of heroes search for this train to bring it back to sort of inspire revolution, while revolutionaries in the city seek to foment revolution. All the while, don't forget Tesh. Anyway, I love this book. I mean, well, actually, I don't think it's as good as Predito Station or The Scar, but I do remember quite liking it. But again, it's been far too long since I've read it. I really need to revisit it too. The next two books are by Sam J. Miller. This is Blackfish City. It's a near-ish future science fiction novel set on an oil rig city. It's about family and a broken family coming back together after decades of being apart. And it's a story of revenge. When I first read it in 2018 or 2019, I quite liked it. Although I had some massive problems with it. My favorite character was largely disposable, and that kind of bugged me immensely. And the revenge aspect of the story I thought was forced. So, and when I kind of had another go at it in 2020, I didn't get on with it at all. And I also have this Sam J. Miller's most recent book, The Blade Between. This is a contemporary horror novel about a photographer in New York who's gone back home to take care of an ailing father. While he's there, he connects with his high school boyfriend and romantically, while at the same time engaging in all sorts of political mischief with his high school boyfriend's wife. All the while, there is some kind of Lovecraftian horror that exists in the town. I bailed after the first 2 or 3 chapters. I might give it another go, but this was bad. And I wrap up this shelf with a lot of Michael Moorcock. So, I have The Bull and the Spear, the 4th book of Quorum. The Champion of Garathorn, the 2nd book of the Chronicles of Castle Brass. This is Count Brass, the 1st book of the Chronicles of Castle Brass. Michael Moorcock wrote far more than just Elric of Melnibone. Speaking of which, this is The Vanishing Tower, book 4 of the Elric saga. This is The Sailor on the Seas of Fate, the new Elric novel, which is not very helpful. Trying to figure out where it actually belongs. This is Stormbringer, which I think is the first Elric novel, or short story collection. And then I have a few omnibuses. This is Dancers at the End of Time, which includes An Alien Heat, The Hollowlands, and The End of All Songs. And I also have Hawkmoon, which is a omnibus edition of that includes the Jewel in the Skull, the Mad God's Amulet, the Sword of the Dawn, and the Rune Staff. So that concludes part 38 of my 2022 library tour and part 15 of science fiction and fantasy. I will be back tomorrow with part 39 and part 16, and then we'll be on the final week. So yeah, looking forward to that. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe, and I will be back shortly with a special announcement video. So hold tight.